Fuel Pulse Show podcast, where we talk about all things fuel for all kinds of people. I'm your host, Erik Bjornstad, and I'll be your guide through the ever-changing world of fuel. Today, we're continuing our Fuel Pulse Show back to school episodes, where we go back and we dig into the basic building blocks of fuel care. Now, in our last episode, we laid the groundwork for talking about microbial problems in fuel, touching on why fuels today develop these problems so easily and what kind of problems go along with microbial contamination. And we left off by asking, how do you know if you have a microbial contamination problem? And we said that there were both indirect and direct clues as to that answer. So, indirect signs you might have a microbial problem. First, filter plugging happens faster than normal. Most businesses, most entities that have stored fuel, they know about how often they have to change fuel filters. And if that interval shrinks, that can be a sign that there's microbial contamination in there. And then, speaking of filter plugging, if you take one of those filters and you crack it open, what you might find, maybe it's dark, maybe it's slimy or gel-like. Both of those things are typical of microbial biomass getting trapped in that filter. The filter medium itself also might be discolored. It might be black, it might be brown, it might even be green. That's a sign that not only do you have a microbial contamination problem in the tank, that's a sign that microbes have actually started growing colonies inside that filter. And then the fuel itself, if you take a sample, you examine it, and the fuel doesn't seem like its normal condition. And by that, specifically, if it smells different, if it smells sour, if it smells rotten, that's an indicator. All of these are indicators of metabolic processes of certain kinds of microbes. Then we also hinted in the last episode that if you find a free water phase in your storage tank, that doesn't in itself prove that you have microbial contamination, but having a water phase in there is a sign that one of the critical building blocks for contamination is in your tank. And then if you pull a fuel water sample and you look in that sample and you see that you have water at the bottom, you have fuel on top, but then what you also see is this telltale stringy solid stuff or semi-solid stuff that's kind of floating in between. They refer to that as a rag layer, and that the presence of a rag layer is a telltale sign of microbial contamination because that's essentially microbial biomass that you're seeing. So those are some indirect hints that you might have microbial contamination in there. The direct way to know is through having some kind of microbial test done. Now, if the test is done right, it's going to tell you if you have microbial contamination or not, which is a step better than having to make inferences based on what you're seeing in other areas, okay? Now, there are some tests where you take a sample and you send it off to a lab, and the lab does the test for you. There are also some tests that are fast enough and easy enough that you can actually do them yourself in the field wherever you are. Now, we could spend more time than we have here explaining the pros and cons of the different testing technologies. We're not going to do that. For now, we're just going to leave it at saying that microbial testing is the one direct way you can confirm if you've got a microbial contamination problem. Okay, so we talked about what problems the microbes cause, and we all talked about how to confirm the problem. The last thing may be the most important thing of all. How do you get rid of them? First, let's talk about what you don't do. Now, we've already established microbes need free water to grow. But saying that isn't saying that where there's no free water, or if you remove the free water, the microbes are going to die. That's not really what we're saying when we say microbes need free water to grow. It's also definitely not true that just removing the water phase will cause any existing microbes in there to die off and go away. See, microbes are very adaptive. They don't need very much water to grow. And For, let's say, taking a typical technician who's removing a water phase out of a tank, trying to remediate this problem, most of the time they'll remove the free water and they'll be pretty sure that they got it all, but there's almost always at least a little bit of water left in there somewhere. And that little bit is all that the microbes need to start back over. So step one is remove as much of the free water as you can. Yes, but you can't stop there. You have to do the second part as well, which is you have to apply a chemical biocide to kill the microbes. That's actually the most important part of the process. You apply the biocide and then you want to circulate it to make sure that it gets to as many of the different parts of the system as possible. Biocides are chemicals that kill living microbial organisms, but they can't kill what they can't get to. So you have to circulate it in there, make sure that it's well mixed, and then let it do its thing. Last thing to remember about biocides. Biocides are considered to be a class of registered chemical treatments that are legally approved to go in places like fuel and kill microbes. Now, because microbes in fuel tanks and in fuel storage systems are becoming such a widespread problem across the land, right? There are a lot of products out there that imply that they act like biocides, but they really don't. Now, they might imply when you read their product claims, it might imply that, for example, they control water, so therefore they reduce microbial growth, right? Or they may even flat out say that they kill microbes when they really don't. Now, there's actually law that governs this area. And by the letter of the law, it is actually illegal to make those kinds of what they call biocidal claims if the thing in question isn't really a biocide. Which leads us to the question, how do you know if something actually is a biocide? Well, there is an easy way to tell, regardless of whether they claim to be one or not. The easiest way to tell is if you have a product, a bottle of that product, look on the front or the back product label. And what you're doing is you're looking for two numbers. You're looking for the EPA registration numbers. There's two of them. And they shouldn't be too hard to find because any product that's legally approved to be sold as a biocide has two things governing it. Number one, it's required to be registered with the EPA. That's to make sure that it's safe to handle for humans and it's safe to go out in the environment. That's number one. But the second thing is they're required to put their two registration numbers that they get as a result of being registered. They're required to actually put those on the label, and they have to put it in a place that's relatively easy to find. They can't put it in 2-point font that you need a magnifying glass for because people need to find it to reference it. And so they're legally required to do that. And so that's really the key. If you're considering using something to solve your microbial contamination problem, check the label to make sure it has the registration numbers. That's the minimum thing that will absolutely tell you for sure if what you've got is actually a biocide or not. So, quick review. Microbes are a real problem in fuel systems. I think we all agree on that. And microbes cause real problems like degrading the fuel, plugging the filters, damaging storage tanks and system components. And they also spread easily to other areas, which is also a problem. Now, you can pay attention to signs like having free water in the system or seeing filter plugging. But the key way to know for sure if you have a microbe problem is have a microbial test done on a fuel sample. And if it's confirmed that you have one, you really want to do two main things. You want to get rid of as much of the free water as possible, and you want to treat the fuel system with a chemical biocide to kill the microbes. And so that's going to do it for today's episode of Fuel Pulse Show Back to School and our quick dive into the issue of microbes in